Welcome back everybody to my channel. Hope you're enjoying the content. This week's weekly reviews and outlook, we'll be taking a look at the previous week that just has ended, and we're going to look forward to the week coming ahead. Now, as we noticed last week, we was expecting a lot of pullbacks in the market. That's exactly what happened for the majority of the pairs. Some pairs did continue to push, like USD CAD and a few others. Oil eventually pushed to the upside, and we had some great moves in the market. This week, we're going to take a look at the markets to see what kind of movements are going to be happening next week. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to happen in the way we envision them, but we'll just monitor for the overall bias of the structure and then look to enter the markets once we get our evidence and confirmation. As I say, if you're enjoying the content, please like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. And just remember, these are not signals. This is just my opinion on the market to help direct you if you choose to follow the directional bias that I'm illustrating. So the first pair that we'll take a look at is the dollar index. Now we can see with the dollar index, we've had this strong rally to the downside for some time now, and we're having this exhaustion move in the market. Now it looks like price is pushing up, which could indicate a potential reversal. So what I'll be mindful of moving forward next week is to see how price starts to push back to the downside. If we start to break these previous structural lows to the left and start breaking some of these previous structural lows to the left, then my overall bias on this market is to expect it to continue down. If price starts to continue pushing up, illustrating this bullish pressure in the market, then I'll be expecting it to come back for some sort of retest of previous structure before a continuation to the upside. So at the moment, looking at the structure of this market, we can clearly see that it is potentially in a reversal phase. But before we continue going up, even if this is the exhaustion, we still need price to pull back to show some sort of evidence of a bounce of a major structural level, then indicating bullish pressure and see this market push to the upside. So for now, my key levels on this market to be looking out for next week is going to be this major structural low here. I'm going to be looking to see how price continues to push up and break above the previous structural high. And then what I'll be focusing on is this range here, to see how price starts to react in and around these levels, either for an exhaustion phase back to some key levels before a continuation up, or to see price finally leave this level, come back for a retest of this previous structure high, and then continue back down to the bottom. Now clearly this is a 4 hour time frame, so the range is pretty big. When I scale down to my hourly time frames and lower time frames, you'll be able to see that the range increases dramatically. And within the previous range that we've seen on this market, there's many fluctuations. So what I'll be watching out for next week is how the behavior of the market starts to react when we continue this journey either back down or above previous structure. The next pair that we'll take a look at is gold. Now as you can clearly see on this market structure, we have finally broken out of a range that gold was trapped in for a period of time. Now the market was winding up, and if you remember last week on the Sunday analysis, I mentioned that we see the bullish pressure from the bottom pushing up, and the likelihood of this market going up is much more greater than it going down. Now that's exactly what's happened. For that reason, what I'll be monitoring next week is to see how price comes back to some of these key levels here after we've broken out this consolidation, to see if we have a continuation to the upside. Again, it doesn't necessarily need to come back to this level, but if we start holding around these levels here and then we start seeing continued bullish pressure to the upside, I'll be looking for structure to form, price action to break previous structural highs, and then look for a continuation with this bullish formation. Understand that price is at a key level in the market, looking to the left, so we have to be careful when buying into that structure. Let's always wait for the exhaustion phase or the break of these structures and then look for the continuations to the upside. The next pair that we'll take a look at is Swiss franc yen. Now this structure looks like it's now exhausting after this strong bullish trend to the upside. Now we mentioned last week that we're looking for this exhaustion on this market. This is exactly what's happened. Within this structure, we're breaking previous structural lows, indicating continued bearish pressure. We're forming structural lower highs and even newer lower highs. For this reason, I'm looking to see this market continue down. Now before this market continues down, what I'll be looking for while this phase in this market is in a push phase is looking for an exhaustion back to some previous structural highs or even a major key level here in the market before we have this continuation down. That's what I'll be looking out for on Swiss franc yen moving forward next week. The next pair that we'll take a look at is Euro USD. Now with this structure on this market, I did mention that it was pretty overextended. We have a strong bullish structure to the upside, and now we can see that the structure is pushing back to the downside. Now, the way I look at this market structure is this as a blank canvas on this chart. And what I'll be expecting price to do eventually is start to fill this blank canvas. For that reason, what I'll be looking at while this market's in a push phase is for some exhaustions back to some key levels in this market before we have a continuation back to the downside. And that's how I view Euro USD. The next pair that we'll take a look at is Aussie dollar, US dollar. With this market structure, it's the same as the last two structures we've looked at. We've been in a strong bullish phase for a period of time. Even if this is the exhaustion phase on this market, what I'll be looking for is to see how price breaks these current structures to see if we have this continued bearish push to the downside. While we're in this push phase, what I'll be looking for is for price to come back to some of these key levels here, looking to the left, and even come back to this major structural high for a potential double top before we have this continuation back to the downside. The next pair that we'll take a look at is New Zealand dollar USD. With this structure on the market, I can see a strong extended bearish structure. And when we're looking at the structure, you will notice we haven't had any clear pullbacks. For that reason, I'll be expecting price to pull back at least to some of these key levels here in the market. And then once price decides to pull back, either show signs of an exhaustion, creating a lower high within this previous formation to see if we have a continuation to the downside, or to see if we're going to have this continued bullish pressure to the upside. For now, this market is not clear, but based on structure and how the market moves, this is a very extended market at the moment with no clear exhaustions. So what I'll be expecting is an exhaustion before the market decides either to continue with this potential reversal or a continuation to the upside. The next pair that we'll take a look at is USD CAD. Now, last week, we expected the market to exhaust before it continued to the downside. We've had this continued CAD strength where the market has just continued to rally down. Now, I don't know how long this CAD strength is going to last for, to be honest with you. But what I'll be looking for on this pair is to see how price starts to react in and around these levels. Are we going to have a breakout, break back into structure before we have the reversal, where we have the continuation to the upside on this market? Or are we going to be able to continue to break this structure, forming a structural low, lower high before this continues down? To me, this market is super overextended. I don't know how long it can continue like this. I personally am expecting a reversal. But of course, we have to allow the markets to play out first before we then decide what direction we're going to take. For now, super bearish. Looks like it's starting to form a consolidation. I'll be looking to see how this price action reacts at this major level low. See if we have any breakouts or break back into structures. And then to see if we have any retests for continuations. For now, just be wary of USD CAD and let's see what happens. The next pair that we'll take a look at is oil. Now, we've mentioned for the last couple of weeks that we wanted to see this market push to the upside. Now, it has been doing that very subtly, and anybody that's watched last week's reviews and outlook, you'd see that I'd mentioned that price was stepping up. Eventually, we have had this explosion to the upside, which is pretty interesting. Now, with oil, it fluctuates quite a lot, so the question is now, how long is this market going to go up? Well, what we're going to have to wait and see on this market is how price now starts to exhaust back to some of these key levels here. We have come to a major structural level in this market, looking to the left slightly, where price has attempted to break on a couple of occasions and failed to do so. So for that reason, this will become a key level for me, and I'll be looking to see how price can break above, retest the structure for a continuation up, or to see how price starts to react now in and around this level to see if we're going to have this bearish sentiment step back into this market. Remember, it's been stepping up for some time now, and this seems to be an extended market, so we can suspect a potential reversal on this pair very, very soon. Let's see how the next 24 to 48 hours plays out with oil, but for now, this is how I'm seeing the market. The next pair that we'll take a look at is Aussie dollar CAD. With this pair, what I'll be looking for is a continuation to the downside. We've had this structure in this market where price was trapped in a range. We then had a breakout of this structure and an immediate break back into this structure. Once price comes to this major key level in this market, here it illustrates by a triple top, price then reacted very violently to the downside, indicating continued bearish pressure on the structure. We had a slight exhaustion phase where we had 12 hours worth of information indicating that the bulls are trying to take over and failed, and now we've had this strong push to the downside. For that reason, I'm more bearish on this market than I am bullish. I see a lower high forming with this pair. This is our major structural low, and what I'll be looking for is for a nice exhaustion continuation or for a continuation retest of this structure to continue looking for sells on Aussie dollar CAD. The next pair that we'll take a look at is Euro Swiss franc. Not the cleanest of structures, but again, If you notice something that we mentioned on oil, we had price action pushing to the upside. We are forming structural highs on this market, indicating that the bulls are taking this market up. Now we have a higher high formed in this pair. Higher high, higher low in this market. What I'll be looking for any sells if price decides to break close below these structures and then pulls back for some sort of lower high continuation. But other than that, with Euro Swiss franc, my bias is bullish. I'll be looking to see how price can now finally break close above some of these previous structures here to the left, and how I'll draw this to keep this nice and clean for everybody to see is to see how price now reacts in and around this level. I want price to break above this structure and close for a retest of this level before we have a continuation up, especially seeing that the market is in a bullish structure at this moment in time. Any sell opportunities, price will have to leave and then pull back for some retest before it continues down. But for now, it's more bullish than bearish on this pair. The next pair that we'll take a look at is CAD JPY. With the structure on this market, again, it seems very overextended. We've come to a key level in this market where price has failed to break above for some period of time now. What I'd like to see is price now finally push to the downside, give me an exhaustion phase on this market for a retest of the structure, or at least a lower high formation before we have a continuation down. Any bullish structure that breaks above this area, I'll be monitoring for a breakout, break back in to see if we have what we call a fake out on this market, because it's really overextended, and now I think it's time to see this exhaustion phase, at least for a good period of time, to give us some short opportunities. This is how I'm looking at CAD Yen for now, and obviously we'll see what happens moving forward next week. The next pair that we'll take a look at is USD Swiss franc. With this market structure, we can see a strong bullish momentum to the upside. This pair is creating higher highs, higher lows. At the moment, we haven't had a strong exhaustion back into this kind of area of the market. So for that reason, I'd be looking to see how price pulls back to give me a nice range so that I can take short opportunities. I'll be looking at the market as this is a structural high. This is a major structural level low. And as I mentioned to you, when you go down to your hourly time frame, you'll see that this range increases, giving you trends to the upside. And now I'll be looking for my trends to the downside for possible sells on this pair. That's my bias on USD Swiss franc, and of course, we'll see what happens moving forward next week. Next pair that we'll take a look at is USD JPY. Now, I want to point out one thing. We can see the market's extended. Now we can see the market has entered a distribution phase. This clearly means that buyers are still buying into the market, sellers are entering the market. Now, does this mean that this market has to go down? Well, of course not. But let's be mindful. The market has extended. We're now trapped in a range where the market is moving sideways. So, based on the overall confluence of what we've just mentioned, we suspect that the market should go down now. When there's a distribution phase, we expect the market to go down, especially when we see sellers stepping into the market and buyers depleting. However, what we'll be patient to look out for is for just a clean break, retest of the structure and a continuation, and the same to the downside, a break, retest of the structure and a continuation. And that's my view on USD JPY. The next pair that we'll take a look at is Euro Aussie dollar. Now, as we can clearly see with this market, it has been trapped in a range for a period of time. Quite a few of them, to be honest with you. But if we take this overall structure here, this overall structural level here, then we can see we've had a fake out to the upside, a break back into structure, and now we're indicating strong bearish pressure with this lower high formation and the double top of this previous lower high. For that reason, I'm more sell biased on Euro Aussie dollar. I want to see a break below this level, a retest of the structure, and then a continuation to the downside. The retest can also come back to these structural levels here as a double top of this previous structure, which will indicate a triple top of this formation. For me personally, I'm only looking for sells unless price breaks and closes above this structure here. For now, with this range, this lower high, this double top, I want to see the break, retest, and then a continuation on Euro Aussie dollar. The next pair we'll take a look at is Pound USD. Now, with this extension on this market, we can clearly see that we're in an exhaustion phase. Personally, I'm sell biased on this pair, and I'd like to see this continue into the downside and fulfilling this reversal in this market. What I will take into account is some of these major structural levels here, which is a major structural high, where price attempted to break on a couple of occasions but failed, and now I want to see price pull back for some double tops of this structure or continuations to the downside with pullbacks to in and around the breakout level on this market, and then for the continuation to the downside. For now, it will take at least 24 to 48 hours for the structure to build, but once price gives me evidence at a major key level or continue push down and retest of the broken level, then I'll be looking for continuations down on Pound USD. The next pair we'll take a look at is US30. Now we did mention last week there was expecting price to bounce off of these levels here to come back to some of these structural highs. Now it hasn't been able to break it. We've had a few fake outs to the downside that you could have possibly got trapped into. That's why it's always important to wait for these candle closes on these 4-hour time frames. We are heading back up to the structural level where we expected the market to come back to again. So what I'll be looking for now is a continuation for this completion of this movement back to the upside, and then start to figure out what's happening in and around these levels. Are we having a retest of this structure before we come down? Are we going to have a breakout and close above this structure? Or is the market just going to continue plummet into the downside and do what we don't expect it to do? For now, I just want to see price get back to this level, show some sort of signs of a retest of this structure, and then if we get the evidence, maybe fulfill the range again and sell this back to the downside. If we have continued bullish pressure, then it's going to be a simply waiting for price to break close above structure, which we haven't had here, to indicate this bullish pressure, and then we can look at this market at a different angle. But price is held where we expected it to hold. It now is pushing to the upside, so let's see how it reaches its goal of this top side of this range, and then we can start to work out what's happening once price gets back there. The next pair that we'll take a look at is silver. As expected, the market has gone to the upside. We can clearly see with the structure that the market has been doing what oil done, and some of the other pairs that we mentioned, I think it was Euro, Aussie dollar, now we're expecting the price to continue pushing up. Once this market has pushed up and broken above these structures, closing pretty high, what we'd like to see is a retest of these levels to see how the market reacts for a continuation to the upside. Let's not forget though, we've had a strong push, and then immediately after that we've had strong bearish pressure. So for any sell opportunities, we could use this as a major high level, and then we'd be looking for price to come back for these levels for a retest before we have this continuation down. Silver at the moment needs to form some new structure, but to work with this moving forward next week, if you trade it, is I'll be looking at around these levels here for a potential retest and a continuation bullish, and for sells I'll be looking for price to come back to this level. Given the evidence that we have rejection and we have momentum shift from this level, we'll be looking for sells. And that's how I see silver. The next pair that we'll take a look at is SPX 500. Now, as we can clearly see, this market has been pushing up for a very long period of time. What I'll be looking at now is looking at this market from the bottom to the top to see how extended it is. I'd like to see now this bullish pressure has been obviously going up, but not with any convincing movement to suggest that this is going to continue up. For that reason, what I'll be looking at on this pair is this being the major structural low of its current structure, this being the major key level on this market. If I'm looking for sells, I'm looking for price to finally break close below this structure for then retest of these previous levels here for a continuation down. And for buys, the only level that I'm going to be looking at is if price comes back to this level once again for a continuation up. Given the evidence that price holds this level and gives us signs of rejection, then I'll only be looking for a continuation here. Not this level here, this major key level here. But other than that, I think this market is extended. We are due a huge exhaustion on this pair. So for next week, I'll be looking for sells more than anything. But let's see how price exhausts and then gives us the evidence if we're going to have this continuation up. The next pair that we'll take a look at is USD ZAR. Now we can clearly see with the structure it has been pushing down for a very long period of time. The last time that it entered a phase of consolidation was in and around this level here. Then we had a continuation which finally broke structure. We now exhausted that market. We attempted to push down to make a lower low and failed, and now we stepped into a range. How I view this market is now that price is in an accumulation phase, which means that bears are continuing to push this market down, but the bulls are stepping in. Are we going to have a reversal on this market? Well, it looks likely, but obviously to see that happen, we're going to look for a break above, retest of these structures for a continuation up. For any sellable opportunities, price is going to need to break the structure strong and then come back for a retest. For now, I'm suspecting a reversal, so on USD ZAR, I'm looking to see this market go up next week. So that's it for this week. Nice, simple, short analysis on these pairs. Now remember, this is a 4-hour time frame. Structure changes every single day. So if you're an intraday or day trader, you'll be looking at these market structures as is, as of Sunday, market open. And then obviously through Monday and Tuesday, you'll be looking for how the market's either continued with a directional bias or to see if there's any reversals in play. Always redo your charts in the morning, because if you've had a bad day and you look back at the markets the next day, guess what? You need a new, fresh perspective so that you can see things more clearly. Never continue the same analysis onto the next day, just in case your head was cluttered or you wasn't thinking straight when you first put analysis in place. Other than that, have a great trading week. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and I'll catch you next week. Hey, and if you're enjoying the content, as I say, please like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Take care, and until next time, bye bye.